So let's take a phone call. We have Marika on line 1. Hello, Marika.
Hello, Pat.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I'm really enjoying your program.
Good. Do you have a question for William?
Yes, I do. I'm wondering if there's any kind of a language involved or a symbolism in these circles anywhere in the world. Has anyone ever been able to interpret any kind of a language or a message?
Well, yeah. I mean, interpretation is a major focus for human beings. You know, trying to discover what these mean. I think that the mathematics is the main vehicle in terms of any sort of actual language. The symbology often mirrors symbolism in many cultures around the world. The pictures of formations have been taken to indigenous cultures on many continents, and to people learned in spiritual symbology throughout history. And many of the crop formations reflect either indigenous ancient symbols or spiritual symbols. But there is no, one of the nice things about the crop circle phenomena is there is no dogma. There's no doctrine that's been evolved. And because it's all symbolic and it's not language oriented, it's not verbal in that regard, I think there is a message being communicated, but it's not necessarily in a language that is easy to recognize right off the bat. And so it's kind of a cat and mouse game, where there are symbols contain information, and they clearly refer to something that is pertinent to humanity, but it's not literal. None of it's literal yet. It's still sort of pieces here and there. And I think most people are along the thinking that it's something to engage us, to seduce us, to kind of draw us along and nudge us a little bit in a friendly way.
You know, we were chatting today about the crop circle that I think showed up this summer next to a picture of what the crop circle makers might look like. And what that looked like was what we see of the extraterrestrials with the almond eyes and the skinny arms and legs, and that face. And then next to it was another crop circle that seemed to be binary code. Do you know anything about that?
Well, yeah, there's a new style of formation that's beginning to appear that is a departure from the more classical geometric, symbols. And these are a style which kind of imitates a graphical approach that we would use, say, on a computer, where you have dots and spaces and dots and spaces.
Yeah, it seems like the crops are bunched in like little bunches.
Yeah, tufts. Standing tufts, yeah. And it's a complete departure from what has been a sort of a classical style.
Which has been the weaving. Well, the weaving still happens, though.
Yeah, which has been symbolic, basically. Everything has been essentially geometrical and symbolic, and this is a departure from that in that it's more literal. And I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, quite frankly. I spent a good amount of time waiting and watching until I got into it up to this point. I don't cover these new formations in my film. Were
they around though?
Yeah, I went while we were shooting. I went down to one of the faces and looked at it, and it was interesting, but I wasn't really ready to dive into it.
Okay, let's look at the last two clips, shall we?
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marika.
You're welcome. Thank
Bye.
In 1990, we had the very first pictogram. We thought they were all like that. It turned out we had the first boxes, the first keys. Prior to that, they'd always been circles.
It was that amazing Alton Barnes pictogram, which stretched out in the landscape 365 foot of it. And it was unheard of. We'd never had anything that length. But not only just one, there were 3 of them in the area, which had all occurred almost the same night. And the interesting thing was that they had additions to them, little sort of spokes coming off them, which scholars of the arcane likened to astronomical symbols, Celtic symbols, and it brought in people from all different disciplines And suddenly everybody was talking together. You got the scientists starting to talk to the metaphysicists.
How many people do you think came through?
Thousands. Sort of carnival atmosphere. Total strangers. They stood together in groups, chatting away about, gosh, you know, what's caused it?
If these were messages coming from somewhere else, it's entirely appropriate that the thing would be witty, playful, geometrical, and staggeringly beautiful and inspiring. The systems of proportion used in all sacred art and architecture are very specific. They all embody a certain amount of geometry, and they all obey certain rules. There are rules which state that you have to balance line and curve in sacred art. We see it all over the place in church windows, Islamic patterns, all the rest of it. So the line elements of a design have to balance the curve elements of a design. Crop circles were obeying that rule. Another rule, you have to balance your light and your dark in any piece of good ancient sacred art. Again, crop circles were obeying that rule. The two-ness of it, the laid crop and the standing crop. Sacred art is supposed to be operating without ego. You don't sign, you don't have artists behind sacred art. The divine is supposed to be operating through sacred art. Again, crop circles were exactly following that rule. And another rule, your integrity of materials in sacred art. You shouldn't really be using anything that's got anything that isn't directly from the earth. You want to stay green and clean and holy. Again, crop circles are obeying that rule. And then you've even got other rules, such as the temporary nature of quite a lot of sacred art, that it's often destroyed. After it's made, it's not supposed to be venerated too highly for too long, otherwise it becomes a sacred cow. And again, crop circles, they're being mowed down every year. Another good example of it. Crop circles are the finest example of modern innovative sacred art for our times. There's no competition. There's no competition. There's nothing happening in the visual arts or modern arts at any level, anywhere on the planet at the moment that begins to compare with it as an art phenomenon. And there is no artist, certainly, who could begin to compare with the artist who is behind the crop circle phenomenon in terms of design. They are very, 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 very good designers, and yet they don't hold their head up. So who are they? So what is it? So who's behind it? Why does it bear all the hallmarks of a mercurial intervention in some way, or even something else? I mean, if it's the guys in the spaceships, I'd love to visit one of their chapels, you know, because they sure do good windows.